Well, welcome back after a nice holiday break in December and I guess the very first few days of January, so that we're getting back on um, our routine here with Wednesday afternoons, and it's always nice to start the year out with a newbie to the party line, which we do have a first time author guest. And it's really great that it's such an incredibly beautiful, beautiful book. So, and it's even it would be a coffee table book because the photography is just beautiful. And if you like the Southwest, or you just like the color palette of the Southwest, or you just like really gorgeous sweaters and accessories, you're going to really like this book. So help me in welcoming Anne Podlesak to the party line. So welcome, Anne, for your very first visit.
Thanks, Beth. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, it's really when I got the advanced copy of this book, well, first of all, just the cover, and I was sold on just the cover. I would have ordered this book if I had just seen the cover, and I didn't get it from Interweave because they're really nice to me. But the just everything about this book takes me back to um, a visit I had to Taos and Santa Fe, and I mean, it's just such an amazing part of the country. And I remember
It
when
is.
I live in Orlando half the year, and it's not the most attractive part of the world. And I was so taken with just the scenery, and just the light is so different, and it's so beautiful there. And you're so lucky you get to live there. I mean, tell us about your knitting life in New Mexico and how this book came about.
Well, you are totally right. I grew up on the East Coast and lived there most of my life. And when we first moved out west, we relocated for my husband's job. I told him it was like moving to the moon. Everything was so different than what I had in my head in terms of scenery and light and how things look. Um, so we are in the northern part of New Mexico, and a lot of times folks say, oh, well, New Mexico is really hot and it's like the desert. And there are parts of New Mexico that are really hot and are desert, but they are down closer to the Mexico border, and we are closer to Colorado. So, for instance, this morning I'm sitting here chatting with you guys, looking out at what usually are the mountains. I can see the Taos ski hill from my back deck, but today it is snowing, so it is cool here today.
Oh, nice.
Um, it's this book was kind of inspired by the fact that when my husband and I first moved here, we brought our horses with us, and we were very avid horseback riders. And we trailered all over the state. We rode in tons of different places, and not only in New Mexico, but in the greater sort of southern Colorado region, into Utah, into Arizona. And each area of that region that we visited is so different, but so striking. I mean, if you're somebody who likes the hot and sandy kind of things, you can find those here. If you want to have big towering peaks, there's tons of 14,000-foot mountains just, to our northeast. So it gives you such a varied set of topography. There's tons and tons of different trees and flowers, and just a completely different vocabulary than what a lot of the folks who know the East Coast well are used to. And so I kept coming up with these sort of mental pictures as we would be out in the great outdoors. And I would think, wow, that would make a really cool motif for something knitted. And so I would make myself a note, and it would go into my sketchbook. And I realized after a while I had a whole lot of things that fell into that category. And so I sort of went through, culled some of the ones that I didn't love, kept the ones I did, and actually the cover sweater that you mentioned was the very first thing that I designed, because I go to Taos Sheep and Wool every year, and the mountains are always lit up with the aspens, and the cottonwoods have just, the leaves are basically that color that the sweater is. And it wound up being a really easy collection to design, simply because everything was sort of right in front of me visually, and I just had to translate it into knitting.
Yeah, it's really a magical part of the country, and for people who haven't been, it's definitely a bucket list. It should go on your bucket list, because I don't think there's any place like that in the world that looks like that. It's really its own thing. And Carol, I'm going to mute you again so that we get a nice clean recording. So if everybody would keep themselves muted, that'd be great. Oh, Susan Leibowitz said also the birds in that area she said, are really amazing too. It's just
true, actually. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, this time of year, we have cranes migrating, and they move down to an area near Albuquerque a lot. There's several different flocks that come over our house daily, usually, as long as it's, we're not sucked in with weather. And you can hear them, and they're these big V-shaped formations. And so that's kind of, I know that winter is here. Once I stop hearing the cranes flying over, we know spring is coming because they've moved further north.
Wow. It's magical. It's magical.
It is.
So, yeah, it is. So now, when did you start knitting?
I started knitting really early. I started when I was about 5. I have a great aunt who is a British war bride. She grew up in Cornwall and met my Uncle Pete when he was stationed overseas during World War II. They got married, and then she moved to the U.S. with him when he came home. And she's actually still alive. She just turned 94. She's in an assisted living facility, but she still knits. So I'm always like, Aunt Iris, fantastic. Here's more yarn. So she's the person who taught me to knit, and I suspect that it had to do a lot with really squirmy, little kid behavior. But, we started with the real basic things like the garter stitch scarf, pot holders, all those kinds of things. But she's a wonderful knitter, and I can remember as a kid she would sit and watch football on television with my Uncle Pete and be knitting an Aran sweater out of her head where she didn't have any patterns. She just had all the stitch counts already figured out, and she would just knit the thing, and it would be a week's project for her. So,
oh my God,
she's exactly. She's somebody with, a huge amount of talent in her fingers, and so I have sent her various and sundry copies of things I've designed, and sent her a copy of this book, and she's admitted that she doesn't want to really focus on this level of difficulty anymore. She just likes knitting baby booties now. But at 94, if you want to knit a tube, I'm fine with that.
Oh, funny.
So that was kind of my first foray into knitting. I didn't knit very much in kind of middle school and high school. I was doing the horse and boy thing that one does when you're a teenage girl.
Yeah, the boys. Absolutely. You get distracted.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. But I picked it back up my senior year of high school, and then I knit most of the way through college, and just had it as kind of a thing to do when I was reading or studying, just, to kind of have something to stay awake when you're trying to pull all-nighters and focus on reading information during that time.
Yeah, well, and then we come back to it.
Right.
Yeah, and I know so many people who did that, who learned to knit and then didn't knit for a long time, and then came back to knitting. And and for me, when I came back to knitting, it had been 30 years, and the yarns. Okay. I mean, I think that's the thing is right now the fibers that are available for knitting, it's like, how can you not have that in your hands all the time? Because it's so scrumptious. You spin and dye, right?
I do, yes. I have my own online business. One set of the yarn a project in the book is from my yarns. The rest are other folks. But the Santa Fe wrap is one of the palettes that I dyed. I just was really drawn to those colors and thought they looked great in the project, and I love the way that they styled that project in the book as well. I think they did a great job with it.
Yeah, well, and the styling in this book is really,
it's phenomenal.
Really great. I mean, they did a beautiful job, and I think since Interweave is based in Colorado, they kind of get it. They do. Yeah.
They do. And another thing, my editor was kind of laughing at me a little bit because when we started this process, I had already self-published some smaller collections. So I kind of knew how my process worked at my end, but obviously hadn't worked with a larger publisher. And I always pull together Pinterest boards. That's how I like to visualize things. And so once I signed my contract, when we got talking about how the book was going to be laid out and sort of look and be put together, I think I sent her 8 different Pinterest boards. I sent her one that was just how I would like the models to look. I sent her one that was just clothing and boots. I sent her one that was places I had already visited in Colorado. I thought might be nice for them to use if they photographed, because I'm a little OCD and, I like what I like. So she, received all these links and was like, oh, wow, these are comprehensive. And I said, well,
comprehensive is a really nice word for that. I'm going to have to use that.
Yeah, I'm sure that she just had this moment where she thought, wow, I do not need to look at 250 images from this person. But, as it turned out, they completely got what was inside my head and were able to put it to paper. I mean, from the location to just how the models look. I love the fact that the model on the cover is smiling and looks happy and it looks like she's enjoying herself and doesn't look like she's standing on a runway and hasn't had a donut ever.
Yeah.
So, I just really, I just love everything that they did with the presentation of the designs.
Yeah, and in this book, to me, it looked like the models were wearing their own clothes. I mean, because it just looked so natural. So, right. Yeah, and Susan says, you can't help but smile when you look at her, which I agree. This is such a happy cover, and the sweater is gorgeous. So let's take a look at the book. What do you think? You're going to give us a tour?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So, and I very rarely select because I pull like a sample of things from the books when I do this, so people kind of see, it's always hard to tell. Like if you're buying a book that you're not paging through, if you're not in the bookstore paging through it, you kind of have to go by the cover. And I rarely put the cover project in my collection of what I want people to see, what kind of a sample of what's in the book, so that they, so they rush out and buy it basically. So, but right. I love this sweater so much. I had to put it in the mix, and the lace detailing up the sleeve and there's just, this sweater just speaks. So tell us about the inspiration for this design.
So this is the Aspens cardigan, and like I said, this was the very first design that I kind of got formulated and put on the needle. So this was an easy design for me. I didn't really have to struggle with it. I knew how I wanted it to look, and I knew I wanted a lot of leaf motifs on it. It's inspired by the aspen groves that are here on the mountains that I can, see from my back porch. The back of the cardigan also features that same lace pattern that's the sort of drooping leaves, and it's a wide panel, so it's most of the back. And then the rest is stockinette. So all of the shaping and intricate bits where you have to pay attention to numbers are worked in stockinette. And that was one of the things that I was trying to do in this book was, well, yes, this is a project that takes some level of knitting skill. You're not trying to do lace patterning and shaping at the same time. So this particular project isn't, you're welcome. You know, it's not everybody needs to have a commando project that's going to take them 3 years to finish. You want something pretty to wear for the fall or for the spring or for whenever you have an event that you want to wear something nice. This one is a fingering weight yarn. It's actually Brooklyn Tweed's Loft, and the colors are great in his whole palette, but this one, that's his Hayloft, I thought was kind of the perfect kickoff sweater. To me, it just yells fall. It's a great layering piece. You can dress it up, you can dress it down. I was fortunate because all of the samples that they asked me to knit are my size, and so this one is in the rotation pretty hard, I have to say. I wear it to most of my book signings and trunk shows just because I love it so much. It's like the perfect weight sweater as far as I'm concerned. You can toss it on over a t-shirt, and I wear it with black pants, or I have a couple of different skirts I can mix and match with it. It's a great all-purpose use sweater, in my opinion, with just enough interesting things to keep you occupied while you're knitting it.
Yeah, and you get that nice stockinette break in between the panels, which is
right.
Always nice. So the all over lace is too much for me. So very nice, really beautiful. And I had to put this in because when I saw this pattern, this project, I thought this kind of just sums up the book. This
does.
This is really beautiful, and I love the fact that the cardigan, the buttoning part starts lower, and it has that beautiful V shape down the middle of the neck, and then you also get that little bit of whatever you're wearing underneath it as well. But this is so pretty. Tell us about this coat.
So this is the Grand Canyon jacket, and it's a worsted weight, so it actually knits up fairly quickly because there is quite a bit of stockinette in it. It's got the color banding that kind of gives you just a little bit of interesting details to knit, but you're not trying to knit an all-over fingering weight, Fair Isle type patterned garment, especially not one this long. So the yarn is the Dream in Color worsted weight. I really love visiting the Grand Canyon. We don't ever go during tourist season. We always go in the off season. We always go like December through March is when we visited. And there's just it's like the perfect supermodel. The canyon has no bad angle. The colors in it are amazing. It doesn't matter if it's a gray day. It doesn't matter if it's a day with sunlight. There's always just beautiful views, and there's so many overlooks where you can look down and see the river cutting through things. And so I was inspired by the colors of the rock, that kind of red, warm red with little bits of terracotta and chestnut brown in it, and then the sort of movement of the water with the light bouncing off of it. And so that's what inspired those color work sections. And I wanted something that kind of had a Western feel to it, because I love the way that they styled this, but I could completely see this duster worn over a pair of faded denim jeans, a really straightforward like light blue t-shirt, and a pair of cowboy boots. And it would be perfect to, throw on for the day and go walking around Taos or walking around Santa Fe.
Yeah.
It's a really versatile little piece, and it just, it gives you some options about how you want to wear it, whether you want to wear it very casually, or you could even put it on over a little black dress, and I think it'd be a fun piece to wear out as well.
Yeah, it's really, really beautiful, and the photography in this is just stunning as well.
Yes.
So, and here's a smaller project for those who aren't feeling like taking on a long coat. So
I
I
know that it's a commitment.
Yes,
That's for sure.
and here you don't have to knit the sleeves, you don't have to knit past the hips. So
That's
that was,
right.
yeah, and what I really like about this is that little detail up the front and around the sleeves, the armholes as well.
Yeah.
So tell us about this
So
project.
this one is Ghost Ranch. We're not that far from Ghost Ranch, and that's where Georgia O'Keeffe spent most of her life, adult life, as a painter when she was here in New Mexico. And there's a lot of things if you go and walk through her home there, which the ranch is open. She collected a lot of New Mexico native art and weavings and pieces of silver. And so I had pulled some of the very traditional motifs, the diamond motif in particular, for this one, as well as that little, it's in the red section, it's sort of sets of interlocking triangles. And I wanted to do something that, again, was fairly casual and you could throw on over a little black dress, or you could wear like they've got it styled over a pair of jeans, just an extra layer without too much crazy detail in it. So the other thing that's kind of fun about this piece, which the book shows in the other photographs, all of the interior facing, so inside that opening at the front and your hems, all are done in a traditional blanket stripe. So you've got a little bit of fun stuff tucked up under the hems. Again, just a little fun detail to knit that's not crazy difficult, but just gives you a little bit of something other than plain stockinette, because there's plenty of that on this project as well.
Yeah, very nice. And it just shows what a little bit of color work does.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And not difficult color work. This is very straightforward. It's, the charts are fairly small and there isn't anything too crazy with it. I wouldn't do it as a very first project in color work, but it's certainly doable if you've done a little bit of color work before.
Yeah, and the repeats are very short, which is nice.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
not a lot of long floats. So yeah, very very quick to memorize the repeat, which is nice. And this, when we just talked briefly yesterday to make sure that the tech was working, is I am probably the only person I know that knits that doesn't have a shawl. And I actually could use a shawl. I could use a warm shawl or warmer shawl, because when I'm up in North Carolina, even in the summertime in the evenings, it's cool
Mm-hmm.
enough to throw something on. But I have dogs. I don't want something like, fine lace, kids'
Sure.
wedding ring scarf kind of thing. And I think this is perfect. This is a perfect
It is.
shawl. I love how it sits on the shoulders. And this looks like you could walk around in it and not be yanking at it constantly. Yes, Susan said it looks like it will stay on. And I think that's what I don't like, fussy clothes. I don't want to always be
Mm-hmm.
fussing with my clothes. And the shape on this and how this is done is really genius. Tell us about this shawl, because I might be wearing one later this year.
Yeah, this is one of my favorites. It's a great shape. Susan's totally right. You don't have to have it pinned. You don't have to have it wrapped or anything odd in order to get it to stay on. It's a very generous size. That helps. It has two sort of vertical panels inset that would run down outside of your arm. You can see those right up at the top, kind of just over the curve of her shoulder, that are a separate pattern from the rest of the shawl. And those give it just a little bit of extra width so that it stays on without having to fuss with it particularly. It does take a fair amount of yardage just because of its size. And one of the things we were actually talking about in my Ravelry group, there's a knit along going on for this shawl right now in my group. One of the ladies who started it asked if it would be okay if she did that bottom border in a separate color, which I think she wanted it to be very high contrast, like a pale gray and then almost a charcoal gray for that, which I think would be gorgeous. But that bottom border that has the little cable on it does take almost a full skein of fingering weight. It's like 425 yards, I think, to knit that whole border. So there's plenty of size in it. It's the kind of thing I think you could really wear almost as an outer garment, and not, as you say, Beth, like a sort of wisp of a shawl that you're just sort of wearing as a scarf. It's not particularly difficult in terms of the lace patterning. The main pattern is a very simple repeat, and once you get it set up, you can easily see visually where you are on it. The thing that it takes is just a little bit of patience and time, because it's a bigger project. It's not something you're going to bang out in a weekend while you're sitting on the beach.
Yeah, but if you're knitting one of those really fine cobwebby shawls, you're not going to finish that in a weekend either.
Well, that's
right. And
that's
you
true.
have to worry about catching it on anything or getting too close to people or wearing jewelry, or, that's the thing for me is I want clothes that I'm going to wear and not be really worried about while I have them on, or be afraid that my dogs will touch me. So yeah,
Right.
and I just love how that's shaped around the neck, like it's got garment shaping up at top, which is pretty. I don't know. I might have to do it.
You might have to.
I might have to, because I want one. So unless someone's going to do one for me, I think I'm probably going to have to do it myself. So
sadly, that is true.
it is sadly true. None of my friends knit, but you can't all be perfect. So
That's right.
yeah. So this is, I love this. I love the color palette. Yeah, Susan says we need knitting elves, which I agree. And if only Santa Claus knit, I'd be okay. So, but the color, just the color palette on this yoke, I thought was so interesting, and it definitely a unisex sweater, and it just has that sort of relaxed, like very cool sweatshirt, but 12 steps up kind of feel to it.
Yes.
Really, and with the turned hem and the rolled neck, it's really, I just love this. This is like live-in sweater. Tell us about this design.
So this one is one that I wanted to toss out there, because I think a lot of folks maybe are afraid of color work, and this is a great way to get started, because this is one of the things I like to design are things that look a whole lot more complicated than they actually are. And this sweater, believe it or not, is one of those. There isn't a very difficult chart to follow, but because there are color changes and because you're using multiple colors, it looks like you have slaved over this one, when really most of it's just knitting around. There's almost no finishing. There's no ribbing. There's no crazy detail shaping, none of that. I actually had a knitter just send me a photo of this sweater, which she finished as the very first sweater she has ever knit, and it looks fantastic. So this is a very doable project for lots of folks. If people pop over to the project page for Brimstone Gulch, my test knitter for this sweater is a friend of mine in Texas, and she's a very curvy girl. She's got a great figure. And so she knit this sweater for herself. She picked silver gray for the main color, and then she picked dusty purples and charcoal for the yoke.
Oh, wow.
And she tossed in a little bit of waist shaping because she likes things a little more fitted. And that sweater is like, it's a completely different project. It is so beautiful on her. I almost don't know which of the two I like better, but I'm so happy that she picked something that was very girly and feminine, because it's a contrast to this, but it shows you how this design can work equally well. If you want to knit this for your husband or teenage son, you can go with a much more guy palette. And if you want to knit it for yourself or your daughter, it's easy to just pick some different colors and have it still look beautiful.
Yeah, and if that so much color like makes you nervous, you could always do it in cream and shades of tan. I mean, you could make it much more monochromatic. Absolutely. And just this sweater is going to look good in pretty much anything you knit it in. So It's really
Yes.
great. And actually, Fran sent me a note. She said she loves how deep the yoke is, which I agree. Usually it stops more at the top of the shoulder, and the fact that it goes down onto the chest, I think, is really, really beautiful. And Roxy loves the no finishing approach, which I have two sweaters to sew up at the moment, so I totally get that. And Trisha
Me too.
I totally get that. So, yeah, and Trisha says she loves that this model is so happy looking, and she loves the way you're explaining your projects, and
Oh, good.
she will also knit that shawl. So, I don't want to have a contest, Trisha, to see who does it first because I don't like to lose, and we'll see how that goes. But you and I, Trisha, will both knit that shawl, and we'll keep it secret what color we pick, and then we'll share. So yeah, just really sharp, really just relaxed and beautiful. And then this one, I had to include this because who doesn't love a hoodie? And B, who
Right.
doesn't love cables going up around the edge of your hoodie, which is,
Right.
I mean, just the way it comes up the front and then goes up around the hood. I mean, this is such a beautiful frame to your face. It's really pretty. Pamela says she loves this one. It's just this is a really sharp hoodie. Tell us about this project.
Yeah, this was a fun one. I had a bunch of different cables that I had wanted to use, and I had sort of been going through my mental Rolodex about how I wanted to use them, and I ran into a sample of the yarn, believe it or not, which was the sort of kickstart for this project. It's from Green Mountain Spinnery, and it's their New Mexico organic. So, I mean, I kind of had to use it. It had to be somewhere in the book.
Yeah, you pretty much did.
And I love this neutral stone color with a little bit of heatheriness to it. And so I knit up a swatch and washed it, and it softened up so beautifully, but it was still nice and crisp to show off those cables. And so I was sold. So this one, again, it actually has minimal finishing. You just have to grasp the underarms, and then everything else is done pretty much on the needles. And I know folks sometimes are a little bit off-put by setting in a zipper. I have a Pinterest board that has a whole folder of knitting techniques, and there's a great online video that teaches you how to do this. That's literally no muss, no fuss. It's super, super easy to do once you have it done. But I think with a sweater like this, you could also add clasps on the front if you didn't want the zipper, and it would look alpine enough that some of those pretty pewter clasps would be perfect with it. So this one just, the cable that is on the sleeve is actually broken in half, and that's what is on each side of the front opening and then goes up around the hood. So you're basically getting the mirror image cable that goes down those sleeves, and then a smaller version of it that's on the hood. And then that same cable plus a bigger cable is repeated on the center back. I just think this is a great casual layering piece. We purposely knit the sample up in a slightly oversized version. I think it would be very popular if you've got teenagers. I could totally see this made for a 15-year-old daughter who likes the sort of slouchy look over her skinny jeans. But certainly there's enough sizes in it, you can make it a little bit more fitted if that's your choice and your preference. I love this piece. I have to not wear it as often as I would like because I'm afraid that if I wear it every day, it will look very sad when I take it out to trunk shows. But it is that kind of an everyday piece, you know. There is not a buttonhole opening for each thumb. The sleeves are just, like I said, a little bit long on this model because it's oversized for her.
Yeah. And Kate says this is so beautiful. And Susan says she loves how the ribbing on the sleeve moves into the cables, which is one of my favorite things. And then Roxy had asked about whether there was a thumb hole in here. And Wilhelmina says it's really nice looking, which I agree. It's so pretty.
Thanks.
And it looks like you would be more comfortable than you've ever been in your life, which is a good thing. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I was trying to pull kind of a selection of things. And there are even socks in this book. I mean, it's really got, smaller garments, the coat, it's got little shawls, it's got big shawls, it's got socks, so it's really a whole selection. You could pretty much do an entire wardrobe out of this book, or at least
Yep.
and yeah. For people who are shawl knitters, and everybody I know knits shawls except for me, but I'm gonna do one this year. I pulled this mostly because I love the colors in this, and I know this is called the flower shawl, right?
Yeah, it's the Tres Flores, the three flowers.
Yeah, and you can definitely see that. It's almost like the center of the flower to the outside, and I don't the colors were so gorgeous, and the photograph was spectacular, and there was really, yeah, Kate says the colors are so great. Tell us about the inspiration for this project.
Well, this one, we did a lot of horseback riding down in the southern part of the state, and I think a lot of folks tend to think that the desert is just sand. It's just, there's nothing. But there's actually a lot of things that grow. They're just plants that are suited for more arid climates. And so the three that I wanted to focus on were the yucca, the agave, and the saguaro. The saguaro are those big cactus that folks are used to seeing in postcards from Arizona, but they actually have beautiful blossoms on them. They're huge, kind of dinner plate sized white flowers. The yucca plant has small white flowers that grow on this very upright stem. And then the agave leaves are this gorgeous sort of frosted tealy green. And all three of those plants are in that same kind of muted green palette. So I wanted to choose yarns that reflected that as well. And this would be a great kind of stash buster project. If you had two colors, you could knit the first and second tiers with one color and then finish that border with a darker color. It's it's not as big as that Three Sister shawl we looked at, the brown one that was a little bit earlier on in the presentation.
Yeah.
But you could also go up a needle size or two if you wanted to make a larger shawl with this and have it be a little more open. But I really liked the concept of having the small flowers, the medium, and then the larger motifs to kind of move your eye through the design as well as those color shifts. So I opted for the palette of those muted greens. They're some of my favorite colors too, so that was kind of an easy pick. I'll admit that.
Yeah, really, really pretty. But probably not your first lace project if you haven't knit lace before.
No, I would say it would be something that you'd want to have had at least a couple of projects under your belt, just so you've gotten comfortable enough that you kind of can read the knitting and see how the motifs are starting to grow. If you've done a few projects, and particularly if you kind of go slow and be patient with yourself, this would be kind of a great next step up when you wanted to do some more intense lace than sort of simple eyelets and simple knit two togethers.
And of course, use lifelines.
Yes, always helpful.
And use lifelines. And for people who are listening later and don't know what a lifeline is, I have a really nice video of it on YouTube. And lifelines, if you're doing color work or lace work or cables, good idea. Really good idea.
Very good idea.
Really good idea. So it'll keep you from crying as much when you have to rip back. You'll still cry. You just won't cry as much. So when you rip back. So all right. So and this, when I saw this, it just reminded me so much of the blankets that I saw, especially when I was in the shops in Santa Fe, and the old part of the town in Santa Fe they're almost like art galleries. The clothing stores are like art galleries. And it has in large part because you see, this is so indicative of really what you like, the colors and the patterns that are just part of that, the culture there. And This is really, really gorgeous. Tell us about this project. The colors are so pretty.
Thank you. I love this one. I mean, to me, this is like everything that sort of sums up Santa Fe. It's the colors of the adobe. It's the colors of the sort of trim on the buildings. I had a really fun time developing the color palette for this. This is actually one of my yarns that's a silk and merino base. And so it takes color beautifully and gives off a little bit of a sheen to it. And you're exactly right. I wanted it to look like one of the woven textiles that's local to the area. I tried to use the stripe patterns that are in a lot of the woven rugs and woven placemats. And then the part that you see there, that's the kind of darker charcoal and the turquoise. Those are very sort of southwesty oriented colors. But the fun part about this project is that it's not true stranded knitting. It's actually a slip stitch. And so you're only working with one color at a time for each of those rows back and forth. And because it's slip stitch over a very wide band, unlike stranded knitting, most knitters don't have to worry about any gauge changes between the stockinette portion and that the slip stitched portion. So, it's kind of a win-win project in that it gives you a ton of interesting color and patterning, but it's actually a very straightforward knit. I mean, it's knit, purl, and slip stitches, and that's it.
Yeah, and if you haven't done slip stitch knitting, it's really so much fun, and that's what Pamela was saying. She goes, it's easy too, which I agree. Kind of once you get used to how to read the chart, it's I mean, yeah, it's really. I mean, it doesn't change your stitch gauge. It changes your row gauge, but it doesn't change your stitch gauge. So it's really easy to drop a band of it into an existing pattern. But the colors on this were, I mean, just really stunning. And Pamela says her mother was born in Arizona and she would love this. So I think, Pamela, you should knit this for her. Now that you've told us that.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I think you should knit it for her. What a great gift. Can you imagine getting that as a gift?
Yes.
Leanna. Yeah, and Trish says she loves the pattern and the colors. And that little purple stripe, which sets it off. It's like just that little purple stripe. It just adds such a beautiful pop of color to it. But Trisha wants to know, how did you keep the edges from rolling on this? What did you do on the edges?
Trisha, they are just simple garter stitch edges. So you knit the last few stitches of every row and the first few stitches of every row to keep it nice and flat. And then it doesn't show it in this particular picture, but the short ends also are garter stitch. So you'll have those to start with before you start the stockinette portion.
There you go. Yeah, really, really beautiful. And this one I had to put in. Well, A, I love the color palette, but B, it's got sheep on it. And what knitter doesn't just love things with sheep on it? And I have sheep on my desk. I mean, it's sheep, for heaven's sake. We love wool, so how can you not love sheep? So this is such a cool design. And I wouldn't want to put anything over it ever because I would want to show off my sheep. But and tell us about this one. And it's a much more muted palette. Oh yes, Frances, this is a must knit, which I agree. It's a much more muted palette than a lot of the projects.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah, one of the things that we had decided to do was not to have everything in this sort of, I'm going to put finger quotes here, Southwest colorway, because there are a lot of sort of natural grays, natural browns that occur in this area. And so, for instance, like the cabled hoodie that we saw, that's kind of part of this natural color group. One thing about the book is that for each project, you guys are getting the benefit of hearing me chat about the individual designs, but I've got an introductory paragraph on each of the projects that kind of discusses my inspiration. So if you get the book, there's also some other information in there about why I chose certain colors or why I leaned in a particular way towards something. But this one, the the local sort of native sheep to our area that the native tribes raise for multi-purpose breed is the Churro sheep, and they come in this huge palette of interesting natural colors, just like Shetland. And so while Churro yarn is not easily available, I did choose a palette that was all undyed natural Shetland colors for this. So you've got light gray, dark gray, and then those kind of taupey browns and the darker chocolate brown in the geometric patterning. And so for this, I also was trying to bring in some of the traditional weaving patterns of the native tribes of this area that are found near where we live, mostly the Navajo weavings. And so this combination with that cute little sheep motif and then some of the geometric motifs to kind of balance it, I didn't want anything that was kind of over the top in terms of a colorway. I wanted something very sort of rustic feeling and natural feeling. And this cowl you can, I mean, certainly you can knit it to the size it is, but then you could also take out repeats and shorten it if you wanted something to work closer up against your neck, if you're maybe interested in it more as a warmth piece than as a decorative piece. This one is actually true color work, but it's worked in the round, and you don't have any finishing, you don't have anything crazy going on with it. The chart repeat is fairly short. It just is not something I would say is a beginner color work project, but I do have a lady in my Ravelry group who this was her second color work project, and it came out beautifully. She did an amazing job on it. It was so even and flat. I'm so proud of her for having tackled this. So it's definitely doable. It just takes a little bit of practice to kind of get your skill set there.
Yeah, and Tricia says it's perfect. She thinks the colors are wonderful together, and she says, "Gosh darn, she's going to have to knit this one too." Sorry, Tricia, we're adding to your project list for 2016, but that's what we're here for. So Trish wants to know intarsia, but this is actually stranded, right?
Right, no intarsia. It's all stranded knitting.
There you go. So pretty. And I'm looking at this thinking, oh, that would make a really nice band at the bottom of anything as well.
Yeah.
I'm looking at that going, I don't really, yeah.
It'd be great as a hat or great as a mittens cuff. It'd be really fun.
Yeah. The bottom of a sweater that's plain the rest of the way. I mean, it's just a really, really sharp design. So, yeah, Susan Leibowitz says also like to put it on a project bag. How perfect would that be? Yeah,
absolutely. That'd be gorgeous.
Yeah, perfect. So, and here's another one from that more muted palette. And I love that your cardigans your sweaters don't all close with a typical button band and buttons. That this is because some of us don't actually like doing button bands, and mine just never quite lay as nicely as I would like them to. But I don't like open jackets, so I like my jackets to close, and I also like them to have deeper necks. So this is, and Susan said, yeah, this is very figure flattering, and I think pretty much all body types would look good in this sweater, and it's just the banding on the neck and the sleeves is just really, really pretty. Tell us about this design and your inspiration.
Yeah, this one I think is a great another multi-use piece for your wardrobe. I mean, I've tossed it on with jeans. I have worn it with dressier dress pants and a denim shirt under it. I have a lady in my local knit group who knit it in black with turquoise blue for the contrast on the bands, and it's beautiful.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it's a completely different look, but still, kind of in the same general concept palette.
Yeah.
We live near Bandelier National Monument, and the same group of the National National Park Service who runs Bandelier also take care of the smaller site near us that's called Sankawi, and literally this is 4 minutes from my house. And Sankawi does not have a ranger station. Sankawi, you just kind of have to know where to park. And there's a little lot, and you get out of your car and you walk out, You climb one wooden ladder up to the top of the mesa, and you can walk the entire area all on your own. And it's amazing. There's petroglyphs on the walls, and as you're walking along, there's broken pottery, just pieces of it laying next to the trail. The place is just oozing with history, I guess is what I'm trying to say. There's the paths that you walk have been worn in the stone over centuries of people walking it. And it kind of almost gives you a little chill on the back of your neck to like stand in the same place that someone 1,000 years ago was standing while they were carrying a cooking pot. And so this particular piece, I wanted to use the tones of the colors in the pottery and then also reproduce some of the designs that were marked on the pottery and painted on the pottery before it was fired. And so those are the geometric patterns that are on the cuffs and are on the bands. This one is actually a super quick knit. It's knit in a heavier wool. Folks in warmer climates could definitely get by with it as an outdoor jacket. For me, it's something I would wear in the house. We're cold enough here that's an extra layer is always nice. You certainly can make adjustments to the length if you wanted to make it a little bit longer or shorten it. There's a lot of stockinette that gives you some room to make those edits if you wanted. And then one of my favorite bits about this particular piece is the cast on edging, which is actually a braided technique. And again, it's, nothing difficult, nothing that's crazy and over the top, but just something different than your basic ribbing at the cuffs and at the hem. And it gives you that great little extra detail against that stockinette that I think is really funny. It's really fun to look at.
Yeah, it's really, really pretty. It just adds a little something special, which this is already a really special sweater. So, and Susan has asked if you could spell the name of this place that you were talking about.
Sure. It is T-S-A-N as in Nancy, K-A-W-I, and it's pronounced Sankawi.
Yeah, I have a feeling Susan's putting it on her list of places to go visit. So, absolutely. Well, thanks for the tour, and I know that people are going to be interested in following you and catching up with what you've got going. And, of course, the easiest place to find you is on your website, Woolly Wonka, which just always makes me want to laugh when I hear that. Woolly Wonka, Fine Yarns, Fabrics, Knitting Patterns, where you can also the yarn that Pamela says she loves the website name. She's laughing. The where you can because the yarn for that beautiful like blanket wrap, of course, is available here as well. So here's how you can keep track of what's going on with Anne, and then like many designers, Anne is on Instagram and will send pictures. We'll be posting pictures of her latest projects. Oh, and you can see somebody's been spinning. So this is my husband's worst nightmare, I have to tell you, is that I would start, well, if you could see the wall of yarn behind me here in my house, you would understand why, but that I would start actually making yarn. I think it's like, yeah.
Yeah, I get it. I totally get it.
Yeah, we don't want to talk about that in the house. So you can also keep track of and like Willy Wonka fibers. Tricia says she didn't tie you to Willy Wonka. She just received an order of yarn from you. That's so funny. Small world, isn't it?
There you go.
So yeah, so you'll see that there's that you can keep up here. Oh, and oddly, there's a little link to Planet Purl. So for the event today. And then Anne has a Ravelry designer page, of course, where you can see also other projects from the book, as well as other patterns she's done for magazines. and self-published, and she has a pattern store there as well. And you do have you were talked earlier, you have a knit along going on, and there you do have a Ravelry group for people who are in Ravelry who want to participate or just stay in touch with you. And you talked earlier about Pinterest boards, and I love going to other designers' Pinterest boards. I love seeing what inspires them and see how that informs their design work. And I had a lot of fun on yours, a lot of fun. So
Thank you.
yeah, so I too love steampunk, and I see you have one that's called the Parasol Protectorate. So I'm assuming you've read those books.
I have. I love them. That designer is wonderful. Or author is wonderful. I actually did a design a year and a half ago based on the main character in that, and the author was kind enough to blast it onto her Facebook page, and I think confused a lot of people, but that's okay. She thought it was lovely, so that made me happy.
Yeah, I love those books too. So they make me laugh, which is great, which is always good.
Yes.
Now, if you're not lucky enough to win a book, because you know everybody, I'm giving away a book today. You all know that because that's how I roll. It's my jam. So is that we always give away a book during the event, and then we'll give away one later this week. Today's Wednesday, starting on Thursday at 8 o'clock on our my Planet Purl page here on um, Facebook. Is that I'll be giving away another one. And I think you'll have till like Saturday evening to post on that. But if you're not lucky enough to win either one, you call your local yarn store first to see if they have it and ask them why they don't if they don't have it. And if you need instant gratification because they don't, you can also help support Planet Purl by coming over here. And you'll see Free Spirit Knits if you go to the book link at the top, and you'll see Free Spirit Knits here, and you can order it directly from Amazon, but we get a little commission, which helps pay for like GoToMeeting for events for today, like today. So yeah, the giveaway starts tomorrow on our Planet Purl Facebook page. And before I let Anne go, don't go away though, Anne, because we're going to give away a book. I do want to remind you, if you haven't been checking your Facebook page lately, is that at Purl Queen Patterns, we currently have all of my books are currently on massive New Year's sale. So as well as patterns, they're all at least 50% off. So that's a good thing. So I want to thank you, Anne, for being here today. I'm really in love with this book. I was so excited that I was not. I loved the cover, and I was so worried about being disappointed when I opened it. and I was not. And I'm going to have a little. I think I'm going to have a lot of company in knitting these projects. So yeah, Roxy said, and the designs are wonderful, and thank you, and thank you for the book, and also thank you for and sharing your love of your new home, and also for being here today and taking some time out to talk about and give us a guided tour, which was really nice. And thanks to everybody who's here today as well for taking time out of their day to share that with us. And yeah, Susan said too, she loved hearing about how your inspirations and how you created these is just really been special. So it's a great way to come back from the holidays. And Fran says it looks like a fantastic book, and I think she's right. So everyone in the room, stick around. I'm going to give away a book. And everyone else who's coming back to watch this on YouTube, check the Planet Purl Facebook page. Because if you're in time, you might have an opportunity to win a book as well. So take care, everyone. Thanks for being here. And thanks again, Anne.
Thanks.